It was the 28th of July, 2022. Me and a friend were going around a park I'd never been to before. I was quite amazed by the sheer variety of birds that I had already seen. But then I heard a strange sound. This didn't sound like a typical English bird. It was very unfamiliar to me and definitely warranted further investigation. And then I saw them. Parakeets! At least I think that's how it went, although I didn't get any pictures of them at the time. It may not have been until the 19th of March 2023 that I actually saw them, though I find that unlikely with how loud they are. But this was just the beginning. I had many questions that I wanted to answer. So let's have a look at the parakeets of Northamptonshire. Many people already know that parakeets exist in the UK, especially around London, but it was such a surprise to me to have them so nearby. I won't talk for too long about how they got here, as many people have covered this already. But generally speaking, these are parakeets that had either been intentionally released or escaped from captivity, with some of the first breeding records coming from the 1960s. And several escapes from then onwards only increased the genetic diversity of the population, to the point where now these parakeets are well established in several parts of the UK as a feral breeding population. And just in case you're unaware, these are the ringneck parakeets, also known as the rose-ring parakeets. While there are sometimes other feral parrots spotted in the UK, these are by far the most successful species. Naturally, these parakeets are found in parts of India and Africa. Now, of course, I had many questions I wanted to answer about these parakeets, and while I did visit them a couple times over the next few years, it wasn't until 2025 when I was actually able to answer some questions. Was this the only breeding population in Northamptonshire? What were they eating? How many were there? Why had they chosen to live here in this location specifically? And did they live up to their invasive, destructive reputation? I searched in many different areas, and ultimately I did end up finding 3 different locations with feral parakeet breeding populations. In total, I'd seen roughly around 40 to 50 parakeets, and seen many behaviours that hadn't really been well documented previously, such as the parakeets having a taste for fresh buds from trees including wild cherry, black poplar, and grey poplar. But by far one of the most interesting things that I observed was their nesting habits and preferences. Every nest hole I observed was in a tall deciduous tree, mainly oak, ash and grey poplar. But contrary to what most sources suggest, these nest holes seem to have been excavated by the parakeets themselves, as they were all in close proximity, unlike British native cavity excavating birds. And indeed, I'd even seen the parakeets removing chunks of wood from the holes. I believe this was possible because they'd only make nests in the dead parts of the trees, where the wood is softer and easier to remove, or where a natural split had already occurred. The parakeets had nested quite close to water as well, at all 3 of the locations. The parakeets were also observed flying long distances. It's possible they were flying between the nesting locations, or to out-of-sight feeding areas. Of course, as I'd already mentioned, I'd seen loads of other different birds at these places, and hadn't seen the parakeets acting aggressively towards any of them, and none of the lethal attacks that had been reported in some studies. But there'd need to be some sort of proper long-term data collection to prove any sort of trend in other bird populations in association with parakeets in the UK. And I don't doubt that they must be having some sort of impact, such as competition with native British birds. Sometimes the simplest of things, such as a walk around a park, can end up leading you down a rabbit hole of research. But in the end, exotic birds that have found a new home can bring joy to those who know where to find them. And the delight brought about by birds prevails.